All right, folks, Yishai Fleischer here. The events of this war, this new Iran versus Israel-US war, they're historic. It's like something a lot of people, when you ask smart people, they're just like, I don't know. This is a never seen before event. Israel's big. United States and Israel are in it together. The head of the jihad is finally being struck. It has acted with impunity for so long, and now it's being finally taken down. What about the Iranian people? Is there actually going to be regime change? Has Israel actually destroyed the leader of a sovereign country, taken down, assassinated a leader of a sovereign country? Big issues. Then there's the issues of is America's right wing behind President Trump, or is this a woke right going to take him down? We know, of course, the left is against, and the left, who should be so in favor of liberating the Iranian people, is not interested in that. They're just interested in taking down Trump, taking down Israel. What's it all leading to? Where is it all going? It's a historic moment. It's not, everybody can sense it. It's not just another a little battle. It's not another operation. It's something bigger. And I'm using the word historic because we have on with us somebody who is a historian and is an ambassador and is a person who has now for a long time been able to speak about Israel in broad strokes, as well as the details. And that is Ambassador Michael Oren, who was Israel's ambassador to the United States from 2009 to 2013, where he played a key role in strengthening U.S.-Israel alliance and securing critical American defense support, including the Iron Dome missile system, the development of it, which we see so active right now. So the action back then is affecting what's happening today. He also served as the Deputy Minister of Diplomacy in the Prime Minister's office. And on top of being a public servant, he is a prominent historian and author, has written many best-selling books, including 6 Days of War, Ally, My Journey Across the American-Israeli Divide, Power, Faith, and Fantasy. Now, if you don't believe that what I just said, that he's a prominent historian, here's just the books that I have that I picked off the shelves that I know. I have 1967. I think my kid is reading it. Okay, so the 6 Days of War. So here's just 2 books. I love Ally. This is a fabulous and fascinating book. And so when I think of somebody that I want to get a historical perspective from, and also perspective of the U.S.-Israel alliance, which is so unfolding before us in a new way, there's nobody better than Ambassador Michael Oren. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, that's quite an introduction, Yishai. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for your plugging my books that are now available at famously reduced prices. I appreciate that. And of course, I have the answers to all those questions that you mentioned before. But I'll just say this as an opening. I'm going to quote a truly preeminent source, my cab driver in Tel Aviv last week, who said, "We are not living during historic times, we're living during biblical times."
Mm-hmm.
You sign on to that?
I think there's definitely a biblical moment, and if you're a biblically conscious person, that's certainly the attack on Khamenei on the Shabbat, where we read about the destruction of the Amalekites, the Persian Amalekites. It certainly rang historic for sure, and biblical.
On the eve of Purim.
That's right, on the eve of Purim. But you know what? I like the way you answer that first question. I want to actually give you the floor. Before I ask some kind of question, I would say, if I would just bump into you in a cab or at the shuk, I would say, Michael, give me a picture of what you're seeing. How do you see these events? You calling it biblical? Great, go ahead. Give me a perspective on it.
Well, in historical and personal perspectives, okay, the U.S.-Israel relationship, the alliance, has always been, certainly since 1967, the aftermath of the Six-Day War, has always been the deepest and most multifaceted strategic alliance which the United States has ever had with any foreign countries in the post-World War II period. That includes, U.S.-British alliance, U.S.-French alliance, of course, U.S.-Italian alliance, such as it is. Okay, there's nothing that comes really close to it. And if I had 2 hours, I would go into the detail of what this alliance is made of. And yet, there is nothing in my experience or in my historic memory that approaches remotely what we see today, where you have the United States and Israel in full partnership, mounting an offensive operation against a common enemy. Never been done. The United States never even deployed offensive assets in this country. It was always defensive. It was Iron Dome. It was Patriot missiles during the first Gulf War. There's various American soldiers operating radar installations here, but never F-22 jets. Never. And the cooperation, according to both sides, is totally transparent in utter lockstep. That's extraordinary. I don't know where we go from here in the future. I don't know if we have a different president. It changes. But one thing I can say unequivocally, in this war, certainly, and perhaps in any other war, America has one, and just one, dependable military ally that's willing to fight, willing and able to fight, Yishai. That period. I don't think you can put a finer point on it. And I don't know who the next president of the United States is. I don't care if it's Mamdani, right? His first responsibility is going to be the security of the population of the United States. And you can't think about American security anymore without Israel. And that in itself is just is sort of revolutionary in my experience.
Let's actually talk a little bit about history. You remember the 90s, the Gulf War, Israel was asked to sit out the Gulf War by George Bush Sr.
I took the notes in those meetings. So I was actually present at that creation. And that night in February of 1991, our paratroopers were on the tarmac ready to jump into western Iraq to look for those launchers that had fired some 39 Scud missiles at Tel Aviv. And Yitzhak Shamir, the prime minister, was convinced that we couldn't sustain another night of that type of shelling, that Israel had to react, if for no other reason than to maintain our deterrence in the Middle East. And tremendous pressure was put on Israel. And Dick Cheney, who was a dear friend of Israel and of myself personally, extraordinary, a wonderful man, a controversial figure, but a wonderful person, persuaded our defense minister, Moshe Aarons, alav shalom, to give America one more night, and they would bring in these Patriot missile batteries and deploy them in Tel Aviv. And
why,
they did.
Why is that? Well, but why give you one more night? What was wrong with America, with Israel fighting alongside of America back then? Why didn't it look right?
Because they were afraid, this is how things have changed, that if Israel joined the coalition, which was made up, among other countries, of a number of Arab armies, that the Arabs would bolt the coalition, and that the coalition would lose its legitimacy. It was a strategic political decision, not a military decision. And that's why.
Okay.
Now, we did relent. We relent. Yeah, the Arab policy has changed. Not just the Americans have changed. Today, we may be again in a coalition with Arabs over the next few days. But I later worked with a number of Israeli presidents, among them Ezra Weizmann. And Ezra Weizmann once told me that was the single worst decision ever made by an Israeli government, because it broadcast to the Middle East that we could be hit with missiles with impunity and we wouldn't react. And there were people.
How did it feel? How did that feel, though? If you were sitting in those meetings, what did it feel like when Aarons and Shamir acquiesced to that request?
Well, I know it was very difficult for Moshe Aarons, and just difficult for him on every level, a Zionist level, emotion level, and certainly on a military level. But that as we find out now in the relationship between the prime minister and the president, geopolitics, like just about everything else in life, is 90% personal relations. And Aarons had a very close personal relationship with Cheney and trusted him. I don't think there was the same relationship at all between Shamir and Bush Sr., not at all. A lot of tension there. But the two of those individuals, Cheney and Moshe Aarons, had a very close relationship. And Cheney just essentially begged Moshe Aarons, give me just one more night. And I'll just tell you an interesting story. They brought those Patriots over on Galaxies, and they brought them into Ben Gurion Airport, and then they found out that our tractors didn't have the right hook to take the trailers off the Galaxies, and nightfall was falling, and there was going to be more missiles coming in, and so we didn't have an adapter, and so they taped an adapter. They strung it onto a wing of an F-15 jet and flew it from Rome. It got here, I don't know how many minutes, and we were able to get the Patriots off the Galaxy and deploy them that night in Tel Aviv. Now, the sad part of the story is, the sad epilogue is that the Patriots did not hit any of these Scuds. It sort of glanced one Scud and made two Scuds, but they never took down any of the Scuds, which says a lot for the truly extraordinary accomplishment of Iron Dome. Because
that it works.
Getting a rocket to hit another rocket, it's like getting a bullet to hit another bullet in middle-air.
Right.
And since World War II, since the Germans fired V-1s and V-2s at London, no one has ever taken down a rocket in midair like that. So Iron Dome, which went from drawing board to deployment in the field in 4 years, was one of Israel's greatest technological and military feats.
Okay, let's stick with the war in Iraq for just one more second. In the end, in the second Gulf War, Saddam Hussein was pulled out of a kind of a rat hole, and he was summarily executed by the Americans, as I recall.
By the Iraqis, actually.
It was Iraqis.
Yeah, it's an important
Um,
distinction because we've knocked out this guy, not the
right.
Iranians. Yeah.
And I remember at the time, speaking of biblical thinking, I remember that Saddam Hussein claimed that he was Nebuchadnezzar, right? That he was Nebuchadnezzar, that he was like his kind of reincarnation, and he wanted to be big. And I remember thinking to myself that our Jewish tradition says that ridding the world of evil people is a good thing, right? Because there's more goodness in this world and less darkness. But what happened was not so simple. Iraq did not become a big democracy. It did not become this now liberated piece of land that had flourishing and prosperity and democracy. Not at all. It became kind of the backyard of Iran, and we, in a sense, did the work in the Iran-Iraq war. We did the work of Iranian troops by getting the West in that case, the Americans got rid of the Iraqi uh, barrier to Iran. And Iran basically took over Iraq, and it never became a very hospitable place. My question to you is, first thing, do you agree with that analysis? And second thing, like here we have a moment where regime change is in the offing. But most of us, including myself, try very hard to understand what the breakdown of Iran is, but we don't have a good picture of it. We don't quite understand it. Is it going to break down on ethnic lines? Is there going to be something that holds it together? Are the mullahs going to stay in power? Are there a lot of people with them? A lot of people against them? So, like using the second Gulf War as an example, where do you think this war with Iran is going?
Well, here I have a couple of bona fides. On the eve of the American invasion of Iraq, I was called in to testify in front of the Congress and the Foreign Relations Committee. And it wasn't easy because I was testifying with my former professor, Bernard Lewis, who was very much in favor of the invasion, and I was against it. And I was against it not because I wanted to preserve Saddam Hussein. I thought the American army should just go in there and kill him and blow up his palace and get out. I was convinced that the Americans, like the British and French before them, would tire of state making. They didn't have the stomach for it, and they withdrew. And I'm quoting myself here, that the Iranian border would move 800 miles westward toward us. And then, I hate being prophetic. There's only one thing worse than being a false prophet. You should know it's being an accurate one. And it turned to be true. And so the question then arises. I think you're making a very compelling question and saying, okay, are we going to revisit the fiasco of Iraq and Iran? And certainly that's what many Americans are asking themselves today. And here is a little different. Okay, what happened with Iraq was in many ways a terrible mistake and a tragedy. But the fact of the matter is, Iran does not threaten its neighbors in any big way today. We have to keep that in mind. And in Iran, the devil we don't know, in almost every scenario you can conceive of, is better than the devil we do know. This is rare, right? You got to admit that's pretty rare in foreign policy and human relations. The devil we don't know. Because the devil we know is a devil that is committed to our destruction, not just in word, but in deed, and assiduously trying to produce the means of doing that. So if Iran, descends into civil war, if there's an ethnic breakout along ethnic lines, if there is an alternative leadership, even if the leadership is rhetorically committed to jihad and domination of the Middle East and our destruction, it won't have the ability to do that. So I think there's a strong distinction between the Iraq war and this war.
Okay. Let's take it one step further. Do you have a prediction or a sense, or what would you advise the prime minister or presidents about how to go about dealing with? Okay, you're trying to topple the current regime, the devil that you know. Is there a way to navigate towards a better devil that you don't know?
Yes, and this is controversial, so brace yourself. I've written about it, I've talked about it, and that is that it begins with this: that though Gaza is only a tiny fraction of Iran's size, with a tiny fraction of its population, Hamas and the Iranian leadership are very much the same. Even though one's Sunni and the other Shiite, very much the same. They're the same in that they both aspire to reestablish the Muslim empire in the Middle East and to expand the realm of that empire globally. They are the same in, that using the same methods, whether it's subterfuge or terror or genocide. And Hamas and the Islamic Republic both have the same definition of victory. To win, all they have to do is not lose. All right, and ask people in Hamas right now whether they won the Gaza war or lost the Gaza war. After, I don't know, tens of thousands dead, 90% of the buildings destroyed, Hamas is going to say, hey, we won the war. And last summer, I ruffled a lot of feathers by saying this last summer. I believe, and I think it's true today, that the Iranians believe they won the 12-day war. They didn't lose the 12-day war because they stood up to the world's greatest superpower for 12 days and stood up to the superpower's most lavishly armed proxy for 12 days. Fired a couple rockets at Qatar, and Trump backed down and tied Israel's hands. That's the lesson they learned.
Right.
And they learned the lesson from the fact that the administration said again and again that you're going to disarm Hamas and didn't. And so they thought, okay, maybe they'll attack us, but at the end of the day, we're still going to be standing. And we could wait out this administration. We could wait out 2.5 years. That's not so long for us at all. So knowing that, just like the Hamas guy comes out of the tunnel and goes like this and wins.
Waiting out the Trump presidency.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Or just creating a situation. So how do you do this if you're Hamas? How do you do this? You hide behind your civilian population and you get Israel, no matter what it does, to kill Palestinian civilians. And that generates pressure from the international community and even from the United States on Israel to agree to a ceasefire. Now, the Iranians know that the world doesn't really care that much about Iranian casualties, but they do care an awful lot about oil prices. And Americans care a lot about American military casualties and deaths. So what do you do if you're Iran? You lob a couple of missiles every day at Israel, but mostly you lob missiles, you fire missiles at the oil-producing countries, and you shoot at American service people. And you get oil prices to go up, more than $100 a barrel, and you kill more American services. And this puts pressure on Trump to agree to a ceasefire. It's very interesting how this works, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So you say to yourself, how could we have defeated Hamas? How can we still defeat Hamas? And how can we defeat Iran? And here we have to be honest with ourselves. This is not a 4 or 5 week endeavor. Now, the intensive military stage of it may be 4 or 5 weeks if the military succeeds, which it has not succeeded yet, in knocking out the missile launchers, which is the major threat, and blowing up the arsenals and blowing up the missile factories. But after that, barring an uprising, barring a coup inside the IRGC or the military, this is a prolonged struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And here, the model shouldn't be in Iraq and Afghanistan. The model should be the Cold War, Yishai, which took decades and decades. And America was strong, and eventually the wall collapsed. Communism collapsed in Eastern Europe and Russia. And that's what we have to do. So what you do is you maintain a strict naval blockade.
Is communism in this, and I want you to finish your sentence, but is communism in this case, and is the parable Iran or is the parable jihadism writ large?
Let's start with Iran. Let's see what happens to jihad. I think the fall of Iran will be a big blow to jihadism. ISIS was destroyed, and yet is still around. The caliphate, the Islamic State was destroyed. Nazi Germany was destroyed. But there's still ISIS around. There's still neo-Nazis around. They are threatening, but they're a lot less threatening because they don't have a state structure behind them. So there's still going to be jihadists everywhere, but not having a state structure like Iran behind them will make them less dangerous.
Okay.
But this is it's a long-term prospect here.
You started saying before I cut you off, you started saying about a naval blockade.
Naval blockade. If you have to bomb things occasionally, you bomb things occasionally. And you just create a situation where they cannot recover.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Every time they try to rebuild the factory, it's gone. But it doesn't have to be at this level of intensity. You don't necessarily have to have 100 airplanes in the air every day and have, thousands and thousands of troops mobilized or have Israeli society paralyzed. It can move into different stages. Mm-hmm. But the key to it truly is knocking out those missile launchers.
Speaking of missile launchers, I just want you to see a video. Today, Hezbollah, the Iran-affiliated military terrorist organization that operates in South Lebanon and also operated in Syria to help the Assad regime, had a big success, has to be said. They fired a accurate missile at a satellite dish park in Emek, and I wouldn't be saying this if it wasn't already reported in the news. Usually, we don't talk about where strikes are done, but this one happens to already be reported, so I checked that. But here's the images of this satellite park, which I know very well. It's
I
kind
know
of
it very
down the
well
mountain.
too.
Let's see what it
תראו
looks
מה
like.
הולך, פגעו פה איך קוראים לזה? בצלחות.
So you could see what seems to me to be millions of dollars of damage and probably communications, some kind of reduction in communications, some kind of a cutting of maybe this is civilian stuff. It's been reported it's IDF. I generally think it's civilian. There's no IDF around there. But the bottom line is a strategic spot. It could have been an oil refinery, could have been an ammonia refinery, but it happens to be a satellite dish park, has been hit. And Hezbollah has scored, and they're in the game as well. So it's far from over in terms of these missile firings at Israel. Far from over.
But it goes to my point, because we thought we had so degraded Hezbollah, but they came back. They're fighting even from southern Lebanon.
Right.
And we were forced to let up. We agreed to a ceasefire, but to counter Hezbollah, you can't let up. You have to continue that struggle. You cannot let them catch their breath.
Well, some of the more, let's call it more anti-Netanyahu type personalities here in Israel say Netanyahu, he doesn't finish the job. He doesn't finish the job. He didn't finish it with Hamas. He doesn't finish it all the way. I mean, a lot of those people also said that he's not a fighter and have been very surprised at the intensity of the war that he has fought in the last 2.5 years, and have even admittedly, they say, well, I have to admit that he's really fighting a much more intense war than I expected. But other people say, look, he never finishes the job. He doesn't clean them out.
Other people say that he doesn't finish the job in order to stay in power.
Right.
That's from the left. He's got criticism from the right and the left. That's much like Trump. Listen, I worked with Netanyahu for about a decade, and I know that he hates war. I know that he was conflict averse. And I think October 7th very much changed him. And it became much more aggressive is sort of a pejorative term, but he became much more willing to turn to military force and to use it very effectively. And Gaza turned out the way Gaza turned out because of all sorts of mitigating circumstances. In fact, on purely military levels, and I'm speaking as a military historian right now, is one of the greatest military victories of the modern era, maybe of all times.
Really?
Because yes, without question. By the way, keep in mind that we're fighting on 5 or 6 other fronts.
Right.
But the U.S. military, its most recent examples that were close to Gaza were the battles of Mosul and Fallujah in Iraq, where the U.S. military, and that's no small group, right? The U.S. military encountered between 5,000 and 10,000 insurgents in cities that were almost completely deserted, with no more than 4 or 5 miles of tunnels. In Gaza, between 30 and 40,000 terrorists embedded in 2.2 million people and fighting on 2 levels, above ground and below ground, in some 255 miles of tunnels. No army in history, Yishai, has ever encountered anything remotely like it. And in the tunnels are 250 hostages.
Right.
So you can't put water in the tunnels. You can't set the tunnels on fire. No army came remote. And the fact that the IDF succeeded the way it succeeded is an extraordinary accomplishment.
And you've put it very, very succinctly and very powerfully, and I buy it. On the other hand, though, the counter to that, the but is the difference between Fallujah and the other place you mentioned. They were halfway across the world. This was we were controlling Gaza previously. We allowed this to happen underneath our nose. So I might say Netanyahu, he allowed this to happen. He was transferring money.
That's a different question. It's a whole different question. Listen, I was in government during those years, as you know. I had a lot to do with Gaza. The conceptia, as it's called in ancient Hebrew, the conceptia, that Hamas was pacified, that Hamas wanted to focus on the development of Gaza, was no longer in the terrorism business, was universally accepted in the Israeli government through several Israeli governments, okay? Accepted by American presidents from Obama through Trump. Nobody questioned it. Nobody questioned it. One person, I got to say it honestly, Yvette. Victor Lieberman questioned it.
Lieberman, right.
Yeah, he did.
Mhm.
And, everybody believed it. That doesn't exonerate the prime minister. The buck ends here. Okay. He still has that responsibility. I don't care what the.
Well, you say
What the
everybody
military-
believes it. People like myself never believed it, right? We did not believe it. We were down in Gaza in 2005 trying to block the disengagement, and our words were not biblical words. We weren't like quoting the Bible. We were saying, hey, if you give away this land, it's going to become the forefront of the forward base of jihadism, and you'll see that they'll tunnel to you, and they'll balloon, and they'll jet, and they'll do a rocket, they'll do everything to attack you. Like, don't you understand who you're dealing with? It wasn't.
You should have run for Knesset back then, but in the government. But I just said that was the conception, and it was there. How did we get onto this? I can't remember. But okay, and it changed radically. So we know now. I mean, the Gaza war. I know it's going to sound rather provocative, but the Gaza war saved us in many ways. It saved us because we'll never again allow terrorists to build up on our border. It saved us because we'll never again allow our reservists to go 5 years without training or to have improper equipment. It saved us in other ways. It saved us on the Haredi issue, which before October 7th was a left-wing issue, and now it's a national issue. And in many ways, we're going to come out of this stronger. But in Gaza, we were subjected to inhuman international pressure. Just relentless international pressure, including from our allies, the United States, including from the Biden administration, and later from the Trump administration too. And so you have a situation now where Israel controls 53% of the Gaza Strip. You have Hamas on the other side, which is far, far from ideal. The message is very problematic in terms of Israeli deterrence. But now you come to the thing where you continue the struggle. You don't let Hamas come out of that bottle. You don't let them really develop that part of Gaza. They will remain in the debris. They will not get any aid. They will not get. It's bad enough that they're getting humanitarian aid because they're taking 50% of that humanitarian aid and selling it. But at the end of the day, that's not big money for them. They were getting billions before October 7th. Billions. This is a small change, and they're not getting armed.
And there's another thing.
Just try them. Starve them out. I mean, they will wither on the vine, these guys, but it's going to take years.
There's another issue that we haven't allowed refugees to leave. We somehow have not managed. We've managed to rubble the place, but not to let people go start a life somewhere else and start to.
Is that true? Before I know that everyone wants to leave has been able to leave, but maybe I'm incorrect about that.
That's not what I'm hearing.
I have received requests from Palestinian families who want to leave, and there was always a possibility. They were always pretty much easy for them to get out. Sometimes they needed a sponsor. Like if they wanted to go to the West, they had to know someone in Canada or someone in the United States. But they were facilitating their leaving. It just wasn't a massive amount. And so that is a situation. It's far from ideal in Gaza, but we have to understand that we're not the end of this conflict. We're in many ways the end of the beginning of the conflict, and it's going to take further time. We have to navigate this very carefully because the people in Washington want to put an international force there, and what
including some of our enemies, including the Qataris and the Turks and others.
Well, they're talking about the Indonesians first, and
not great friends of Israel.
No, but not enemies either. They have potential to. But the problem is that it's not that they're friends or enemies. That what are they going to do there? They have said they will not fight Hamas. So what are they going to do? They're going to serve as shields for Hamas.
Right.
Hamas
We've seen that before with UN.
We see there's a rule of thumb, Yishai. Peacekeeping forces work only when there's no peace to keep. And
let's actually let me shift tacks on that. Let me shift tacks. I have you for a few more minutes, and I want to get just one or two more issues that I want to ask you and your perspective on it. We just spoke about when I think of a failed UN mission. One of the great ones that I also dealt with myself was UNIFIL, and seeing them totally fail in South Lebanon and really be a patsy, really be a cover for jihadism, for the transfer of weapons. Every ambulance that we saw that was a UN marked ambulance, it was likely carrying weapons to the bad guys. That was our experience back then. But the story of Lebanon and the story of Hezbollah being struck by Israel, the famous beeper operation, led to something that I don't think that Israeli policy planners were expecting, it led to the fall of the Assad regime. So there are tectonic shifts, and maybe the fall of the Assad regime was also because of the Russia-Ukraine war, where Russia was so busy, was unable to support the Assad regime, and just said, "I don't have arms, money, and time, and support to send you." And suddenly, a regime fell. So I wanted to ask you actually a little bit about other civilizations for a second. I wanted to ask you about the Turks. I wanted to ask you about the Russians. I wanted to ask you about the Chinese. Where are these other big civilizations that somehow have a hand in this whole story?
Well,
where are they?
Syria and Lebanon are fundamentally different from the three countries you mentioned: Turkey, Russia, and China. Syria and Lebanon were constructs of European imperialism, French. In history, there's no country called Syria. There's no country called Lebanon. They were fictions. And they were cobbled together from various ethnicities and religious groups and tribes and clans that didn't want to be affiliated with one another. And they're always held together, certainly in the case of Syria, by preponderance of central force, the Assads. You're not going to be Syria, I'm going to kill you. I don't know how long this guy Shara is going to last if he has that type of cruelty in him. That's the only way Syria is held together. You don't hold Syria together by being nice. Russia, China, and Turkey.
So far, he has shown great cruelty to the Alawites, to the Druze, to the
Alawites, the Druze. Yeah, sure. That's what you do.
And the Kurds.
That's the way you hold Syria together. Okay. Russia, China, and Turkey are nation states that have been around for an awful long time. And they can go through all sorts of vicissitudes.
I used the word civilizations, by the way. I didn't use the word countries.
But they are nation states. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be around for a long time. Now, with Russia right now is bogged down. In Ukraine, it can't spare soldiers to fight in the Middle East, to come to Iran's aid. China has yet to develop a blue water naval force. So it's just not in the vicinity. Now, Chinese are investing assiduously, massively in their navy and armed forces and their technology, but they're not quite there yet. And we know that one of the reasons this war was turned into a preemptive strike was because there was a deal brewing for ground-to-sea missiles from China and Iran, and also the Russians are going to supply them with some things. You know this, yeah?
No,
so couldn't wait. You can't wait till they get their hands on Chinese missiles that could take out an aircraft carrier. Couldn't wait. So they're not there yet. So right now, no one's coming to Iran's aid, and Turks are arriving. I think the only way that Turkey would come involved with this is if the Kurds began to march on Tehran, because that would ode poorly for Turkey. And Turkey has all sorts of interesting challenges in the Middle East.
Let me play a video about that for just a second, just to give us a little color. Let's take a look together.
It's big. A U.S. official telling Fox thousands of Iraqi Kurds have launched a ground offensive in Iran. Decimated, destroyed, defeated. All words the Pentagon used to describe Iran's various military forces on day 5 of Operation Epic Fury. Moments ago, President Trump touting its success.
So we're in a very strong position now, and their leadership is just rapidly going. Everybody that seems to want to be.
The beginning is what I wanted to focus on, which is this issue of the Kurds somehow being led into Iran through Iraq and being a fighting force there.
How many armed people do you think the Kurds have?
I don't even know if it's a true story.
I don't know if it's a true story either.
Yeah.
Because just yesterday, the president said he didn't want the Kurds to act. What, they have 10, 20, 20,000, 10,000 fighters? The Iranian military, the IRGC and the military, not to mention the besieged, is a 1 million-man army.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pinprick.
Wow.
And yes, we've knocked off their leadership, but like Hamas, we knocked off their leadership too, and Hezbollah's leadership. And they simply yell out next, and the next guy steps up. And because that is what their sole way of winning is by not losing. And these are not secular political movements.
Right.
They're religious movements. And I was doing a interview today with a Brazilian crew, and my interviewer was a religious Jewish woman. And I was talking about Obama and Biden's policy toward Iran, the notion that you could somehow give them money, lots of money and respect, And they would sort of jettison this Islamic thing, which was just an expression of their discontent and their feeling disrespected. And I said to her, if someone came to you and offered you the largest house, on the East Coast, and a fleet of Rolls Royces and a yacht, but there's one catch. Every Tuesday night you had to have pork chops. Would you do it? And of course she laughed. No, of course I wouldn't do it. So why do you think if you offer a couple of $1 billion to the Iranians, they're going to give up jihad? They're going to give up Sharia law. They're going to give their vision of what they believe is Allah's desire for the planet Earth and what they're about. And, for secular Westerners, for whom religion is just an expression of some kind of, dissatisfaction, or you're impoverished, or you're religious, or you're oppressed because you're religious. They don't take religion seriously because they don't understand religion. We cannot afford that. And we're up against theocracies. Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran are theocracies. And one of their leaders are killed. They'll just pick another one because that's God's will.
Right, and they're shaheeds, and so they're martyrs, and it's a great success.
So
but
how
at
do
the
you
same
defeat
time,
them? You feed them, but you never let them get off the mat. That's what you
Right.
do. You keep your foot on their neck. You don't let them get off the mat.
all right, I want to start winding down, but I do need to ask you this kind of final, very important question, and that is, you've now talked about Iranian theocrats, and we've talked a little bit about other civilizations, if it's the Russians and the Turks, etc. But a civilization that you're very familiar with is the United States. The United States it's messy. It's not like the United States that I grew up in when I was a kid.
So not
It's a
me, not
different
mine
United
either.
States.
And I'm older. Yeah.
Right. It's especially this, we know about the rampant attack on the left against Israel. That's been there for a long time. Although, I understand that, before I was growing up, Democrats were pro-Israel. But we've seen the movement towards anti-Israel, the Democrat gone from liberal to progressive to full on, I like to say that blue states can turn very quickly into green states, right? Like pro-jihad states like Vermont and New York City. You see that. So I came up with this term called green states. But there's also this thing on the right, this Tucker Carlson, this Candace Owens. It's like a real phenomenon. It's some kind of like back to old Christian anti-Semitism, or at least that's what it's harping on. We know that Qatar is partially funding that kind of thinking. We know that China is propelling it forward through TikTok. But bottom line is, the United States, it's not all Trump over there. It's not all that way of thinking. Even inside the White House, there's other ways of thinking. So tell me a little bit about how you're seeing America these days, this country that you were Israel's ambassador to the United States. Give me a sense of that.
Well, it's a multifaceted question. On one hand, I said to you before that any American president cannot afford to turn his back on Israel because we are the only reliable military ally the United States has. And the job of the president, the first job, is defending the people of the United States. But America has changed. Among the changes are the 80 years now that have passed since the Holocaust. Today, anti-Semitism gets license and language by being anti-Zionism. It's the way you can, be a Jew hater, get out of Jew hating jail for free.
And it's much, and that type of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism is much more popular than when you wrote ally. Right?
Oh, much more. It started there, but it started there. And it's all fundamentally anti-Semitic. I don't care if it's the right or the left. Because, just for example, have you seen any college protests about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, about the genocides in the Sudan or the Yemen? Have you seen any protests, by the way, about the massacre of the Iranian people by its own government? No, only protests against the state of Israel. And by definition, singling out Israel that way is anti-Semitic. The Democrats will say, oh, we hate anti-Semitism, but they're going to cut off military aid to Israel. They're not going to take a penny from AIPAC. They'll take a penny from any number of lobbies in Washington, right? They'll take it from the gun lobby. They'll take it from the tobacco lobby. They'll take it from the oil lobby, but nothing from the Jews. What is that telling? Is that not anti-Semitism? By definition. I give the anti-Semites in the Republican Party credit. At least they come out and say they hate Jews. This is a genie. This is a horrible genie that's got out of the bottle. I don't see how it goes back in. because anti-Semitism is hardwired into Western civilization and has been for over 2,000 years. It predates Christianity. Hardwired. And I deal with the Western press every night, all night. And I will tell you that 90% of the interactions I have with Western journalists can be traced back to classic anti-Semitic tropes. Genocide. Israel dragged the America into war. The classic anti-Semitic trope that Jews are a cunning, devilish people that twist innocent non-Jews around their fingers and get them to do terrible things. That Jews are fundamentally evil. So to believe that we committed genocide in Gaza, you have to believe that we wake up in the morning and think nothing else but killing innocent people. We are evil. We are evil, and we're evil now. That is by definition anti-Semitic. Now, it's very difficult to combat that. We'll do our best. And, with hopes that the future American leaders will recognize that the unparalleled, unmatched strategic value of this country. To say nothing of our common democratic values, our common cultural ties.
And biblical values.
And biblical values. We can't bank on it. And we have to be prepared for changes. Maybe some of them radical, some are not radical. And we have to diversify our foreign policy portfolio. And you may know that for years now, I've called for Israel to wean ourselves of American military aid. And now I think majority of Israelis, including the prime minister, have come away to my thinking. I was the only member of the Israeli government in 2016 that opposed the Obama MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. I did not want American military aid. I wanted to be a partner with the United States, not a recipient, and still do. And so we have to be responsible. And we came to this country to take responsibility for ourselves, and we have to be responsible and not wait to the last minute, not wait till some American president says bye.
Diversify means more independent munitions making and arms making. It means also, would you, see us buying arms also from the Chinese or from the Russians or whoever, or Indian or whoever? Like, what does diversification
A day
mean?
before this war broke out, we were visited by the prime minister of the largest country on earth, Mr. Modi. That to me was a stunning event. Stunning. And it's basically, we should say to Western Europe and all those people who accuse us of genocide and war crimes, tell them goodbye. Finally, we should tell them goodbye. We've got the message. You don't want us. We don't want you either. We have the fastest growing and potentially world leading economy on our side. And we've got this leader speaking to the Knesset. And, that's what we have to do. We have to pivot in that direction, pivot to Asia, pivot to those countries that are true allies. And I feel very strongly about it, Yishai, and have for a long time. And sometimes my ideas are a little uncomfortable to hear. What can you do?
I think that you're totally right, and I think that's not. I don't think it's uncomfortable. And we saw also the reaction that the Knesset gave to Modi's speech. They got a feeling like here's a totally different thing. By the way, an interesting thing is that the covenant with India is based on mutual defense. It's based on anti-jihadism. And where it's not based on shared values is the Abrahamic thing. These guys are not biblical. These are not like folks that talk about Abraham. But there was another set of values that was shared, which is ancient nations. Ancient nations. I think that is supplants, the Abrahamic and the
ancient nations who revere their past,
right?
Unlike the Europeans who want nothing to do with their past. In about I guess more than a dozen years ago, the European Union had to vote about whether to include Christianity as one of the sources of European identity, and they turned it down. 1,500 years of Christendom was thrown out the window. You think the Hindus are going to do that? You think the Jews are going to do that? So we have that in common. We're a traditional country. We're a family country. And we're a country that's willing to fight for itself. That's enough. That's enough. We get Abrahamic and Vedic.
Michael Oren, thank you for this fabulous conversation. I know that you are busy every single night out there, as you said, defending Israel, explaining Israel, and also I would say there's a battle for legitimacy, what I call the narrative war. There's a battle for legitimacy out there. Legitimacy is a very important component of warfare these days. In the past, maybe you were a king, you did whatever the hell you wanted, but today you really need your people behind you, certainly when you're dealing with our democracies and with global opinion. So you're really one of the leading fighters out there. Of course, you were Israel's ambassador to the U.S. from 2009 to 2013. You helped develop the Iron Dome missile system, not on a technological sense, but in making sure that there's support for Israeli defense development. You were also at the Prime Minister's office, where you worked to strengthen Israel-diaspora relations. You're a prominent author. You've written a lot of books that I have read. It's not like I say prominent author, and I'm just saying that I read these books and I love them. You also have a book that you published in 2023 called The Rejuvenated State, and the word Jew is in there, kind of rejuvenated state. And today you're the founder of the Israel Advocacy Group, and your writings can be found on your Substack called Clarity. Anything else, Dr. Michael Oren, Ambassador Michael Oren?
That's it. I'm Yishai. We are going to persevere. And this is a great, as I said before, not historic moments. These are biblical times.
Love it. All right.
Love it too.
Amazing. God bless you. Keep up the good work, Dr. Michael Oren. Toda
Love to
rabah.
Hebron. Bye-bye.
We hope to see you soon in Hebron for sure. That was Dr. Michael Oren here on Yishai Fleischer TV or Yishai TV. It's easy to connect with us. It's easy to find us at yishai.tv. Very simple. Or Yishai Fleischer TV on YouTube or on all our social media channels. And you can support it by being part of it, because you can fight for Israel. You can build Israel. BuildIsrael.com. BuildIsrael.com is a great way to support the beautification, the restoration, the farmers, the tractors, the broadcasting, the teaching of Torah around the world, all the stuff that we're doing. Because we're doing it, we're together with you, because we believe in building Israel together. We believe in legitimizing Israel together. We believe in building Jerusalem together in order to make it God's abode. What else? You could like, subscribe, comment, and share it. Share it, send it to a friend, and help us make these thoughts more prevalent, and of course, bring God into our life. I want to thank my team that's doing such a great job out there. God bless you folks, wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected, and stay part of the story, and stay here for more, and stay tuned into God, because he's broadcasting 24/7 from his abode here in Jerusalem. You're a part of it wherever you are. Lots of love and blessings from the land of blessings, and shalom.